A-League finals heat up. Perth Glory's quest for the Australia Cup and the silly season begins in the player transfer rumour mill. All that and more coming up. This is the Far Post Perth, presented by ID Athletic. For all your merchandise, all your kit requirements, check out idathletic.com. And of course, Trio Homes. If you're looking to build, redesign or renovate, visit triohomes.com.au. Blaine Treadgold is my name. With me on this episode, James Renton's with us. G'day, mate.
Great to be here.
Good stuff. Neil Sherwin.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Good to be back.
Yeah, good weekend?
Yeah. Well, all my weekends are pretty much the same now when you've got a baby, isn't it? You get home from work, you go to bed early, you feed, you shit, that's it goes with it. So no, I watched a lot of sport though. That's the only good thing if I'm housebound.
Yeah.
I've got the iPad. The iPad is tied to my hip more than the baby is, and I've got
a little holster for it kind of thing.
One arm baby, one arm iPad, basically walking around the house all day. It's on the go with me. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
A bit of a different episode for this episode. A little bit later on, we'll bring you a bit of a chat we had with Ben Smith from the West. We pre-recorded that a little bit early this week, so we wanted to kind of delve, myself and Neil Sherwin, into a little bit, in the media landscape, football, media, and everything else like that. It's a pretty good chat, and we'll bring you that a little bit later on. But let's start the only way we know how. James Renton, good, bad, ugly.
Yep.
For the past week. What's been good, mate?
Seeing the plans for our training facility, or our multi-use training facility, get a bit more detail and be fleshed out and made public.
So just to clarify, you're talking about this
for us.
That's going on at Sterling.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was the what was talked about in the.
Well, that was reported by the AFR. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was mentioned that there are other sites that they are looking at, but this was the site that was spoken about in the most detail. So that side, that's by Cedric Street and Mitchell Freeway. And I think when Ross became our owner, he said that sustainability was going to be a big part of one of his three key pillars. But I think fans would have liked to have seen at the time what that meant specifically in terms of how we wanted to be sustainable as a football club. And now that we've got plans for what we want to do, so to speak, in the sense that we want to have a training facility that's not only multi-use but can provide, a good source of revenue. And I think when Anthony Radic did that email to the members talking about how property was, I think, one of the main business units that the club was looking at moving forward.
Well, they were splitting it up into those three pillars, weren't they?
Yep. And it's positive. And, most of the top teams in the A-League have got their own facilities, or they've got a big set of facilities. I mean, Wanderers facilities down in Blacktown, or Melbourne City's facilities in Casey Fields. The best teams have top facilities, and Perth Glory should be aspiring to do that while looking to bring the community along for that project. And, hopefully whenever things do start, it all goes well. Fingers crossed. Where
it doesn't kind of, and this is very, very different to other sports, and it's something that you'll hear a little bit about this with Ben Smith in our conversation a little bit later on. When A-League clubs go kind of looking for a bit of funding, it probably in the public eye doesn't pass the pub test, and the reason it doesn't pass the pub test is these are privately owned entities.
Yeah.
Whereas when the West Coast Eagles or a couple of the other publicly owned clubs go, there's a little bit more that can be justified in giving this money out, that it's going to filter back into. Exactly. Yeah. So this is where this franchise model, Neil, I guess, comes unstuck in a certain way.
To a point, but if everything was equal, all the sports would get a similar amount of funding, and you wouldn't have to rely as much on private investment. I think if they were going to publicly fund a major facility, we've seen that the government, as it is now, is very football interested. But whether that extends to building a multi-million-dollar facility, it's probably not the case, and we do need to rely on some sort of private investment, a bit like CFG at Melbourne City, and them building a campus and building a youth academy and everything that goes with it. I think you do need a leg up for football in both WA and Australia as a whole. We don't get the same handouts. We don't have the same level of support.
Justifying that to the taxpayer becomes more difficult when they are fully owned private entities.
I pay taxes for things I don't particularly want. I don't want an NRL team in Perth. No interest in the Perth Bears. I could care care less. Like, about
but once
that.
again, they're going to be publicly owned.
They are going to be
well,
publicly owned, and I get that. And if somebody wants to publicly own a football team in WA, well, then I'll get behind that.
Well, even community
well,
clubs, even your NPL clubs are
100%.
essentially community owned. Majority of them, anyway.
I'm not going to turn down any opportunity for football to get improved facilities and then improved everything.
No,
and you will always have NIMBYs, and you'll always have everything else.
I'm
that
just
comes
playing
with
a little
it,
bit of devil's advocate
absolutely.
on the questions that would be asked if this was to.
I don't expect it to be smooth. I don't expect it to be smooth.
Yeah.
It's not going to be built in the next year or 2 years or 5 to 10 years. But it is nice that it's being talked about for football rather than something else.
Yeah.
Well, you spoke about, Neil, that we need to own our own assets, more to speak. We need to have something that is ours and uniquely ours, and we own it. And I think if we can get that multi-use training complex done I don't know how long it's going to take, obviously, but if we can get it going and then go from there, hopefully that means for bigger and better things for us, both on and off the pitch.
The location, happy with that?
Oh, well, I live north, so absolutely.
Yeah.
But
but even as someone who lives south, only just south,
station.
but it's pretty accessible.
Well, you can see all the development that's been done at that exit of the freeway anyway, with the
Yeah.
extra bridge being put in, and it is 10 minutes from the city. It's the third station out, Leaderville, Glendalough, then to Stirling. It's not far to get to, even if you did have to change. I mean, I have to change in the city a lot of the time to go to Optus. No big deal.
Yeah.
And it takes you right to the doorstep. It'd be quite similar to that it would if you change in the city. You hop on the what do we call it now? The Yanship line, and it'll take you to Stirling.
Is that what it's called now?
Yeah, the Yanship. Yeah, it
I
goes
thought
all
it's
up there.
known as the Joondalup line.
Yeah. Yep. It was Butler before the Yanship line.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. I don't get up that
Us
way
northern
too often,
folk.
but
Yeah.
there we go. Keep us going with your good, mate.
I think the obvious one is the four Matildas games. I thought we'd get one, but then I was thinking, come all the way to WA for one
What's
game,
the point?
one friendly, and I was trying to reconcile that thought in my head. Like, why would they come just for one game? Maybe they're putting the feelers down for what it'd be like to be in WA, given that they're playing in the Asia Cup next year. I'm happy that it's 4 games and 3 of them at HBF Park. Great place to watch football, obviously. But taking one to Bunbury and to the region is pretty cool as well. I know tickets went on sale for that today. $45 for an adult.
I thought that was all right.
I thought it was fine, and people were still complaining about it. It's an international football team.
Yeah. No, I thought it was fine.
For international football, I thought it was pretty cheap and pretty affordable. And there was a family ticket as well, 2 adults, 2 kids, I think, and it worked out at something like $30 each, something like that. So, yeah, I think for a one-off, if you don't want to pay it, don't go. But I thought it was fine. And I think that they need a bit of hype now as well. The results haven't been amazing. Hopefully, they'll have a new coach over the next few weeks. And will Sam Kerr be part of it? It's hard to know at this stage. Doesn't look any closer to playing. But I think having 4 games here, just again, like I already said, reinforces the WA government's interest and commitment to football.
My good was also around that. So there's just some good news and some bright points around the funding, and governments just putting their hands in their pockets for facilities and realising the possible return for. Yeah. Either bringing the Matildas or international games or even the social benefits that football brings. Yeah. And there's been a fair bit of work into being able to quantify that, and I guess the health benefits of having more kids play and everything else like that. So it's good news. We always say we are coming from a very, very low base, but it's good to see that some ground is being gained in a certain respect. So there we go. Keep us going with your bad, James.
Western Sydney Wanderers' performance against Melbourne Victory, and I guess the scenes afterwards between Alan Stajic and
that was good. That should have been the good.
I know. No, it's. I mean that's fine, but more to the point, their performance in a big game, given the run that they had. I think there were 12 or 13 games undefeated. They were scoring loads of goals, and there was that feeling among their fans, no doubt, that they were going somewhere, and there was that momentum that was coming into. I'm sure their fans would have thought that could have possibly got them towards the grand final, but instead, I thought they were toothless against Melbourne Victory, and I thought they had no answers, despite having some of the best young attacking talent in the country in Milanovic or Sabsford. Most clubs would bite your arm off to get talent like that on their stocks, and those players, including Borello and Krayev, went missing. And I thought, Melbourne Victory, they didn't have to play pretty, but they showed a way how to nullify a really top attacking team like the Wanderers, who I think scored close to 60 goals this season in the league. So, they were probably the bad for me, given just how good they ended the season. Just a very disappointing performance.
Neil, what's been bad, mate?
I know that I said previously that I was counting down the games until Glory season finished, but I think it's dawning on me now that there's going to be no A-League. We've got the final and whatnot and a few games left until October. It's that lull of longest off season in the world again, just that period of having best part of 5 months without it. I know there's local stuff going on, and I know there's other things that you can do in life, and probably should spend some time with my kid and whatnot, but the football is it's an institution. Plus the Premier League ends as well, and I can still try find ways to watch the League of Ireland, but I do like my A-League. So I think just that when you get to that end, I suppose the end of May, when the players are released and they're heading off, and you're then twiddling your thumbs till they come back in pre-season in July, and then you realise you're going to have some shitty pre-season friendlies to try keep you interested until October, and maybe you'll have a cup game, maybe you won't, and it's just it's the drag of the off season is probably the bad that is starting to loom large, right?
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and obviously I'm pretty connected locally, so I don't mind it, but I can see where you're coming from. That June period can be pretty dull. July you start to get into your cup and everything else like that, but you've got to work a little bit harder to be able to find it. You can't just stick on Paramount and
make those transfer rumours as well. That's one thing that keeps I guess the other fans happy. But
that's another thing too, is that if your club doesn't kind of make too many moves in the off season, then you're not really sure what to look forward to as well. So interesting from a Perth perspective. My bad, boys, is the situation at Football Australia, and if you haven't seen it, jump on to X or Twitter and have a bit of a look at Tracy Holmes and some of the I guess a little editorial on what's happening within Football Australia. Of course, James Johnson resigns after 5.5 years. I think James Johnson has done a relatively good job. I kind of had it backwards and forth with someone online and said, well, if you can name me a CEO that's done a better job than James Johnson, I'm more than happy to hear it. Yeah. No one seems to be able to do that at the moment, but I think the legacy of bringing a first World Cup to Australia in 2023, Socceroos' highest ever finish at a World Cup under his tenure, under-20s Asian Cup. There's been some really good things happen. Yeah. The NSD off the ground, the National Defence Domestic Transfer System implementation, which is still pending. There's been some movement going forward under his watch. It hasn't been perfect, but I think there's been some progression now. There's an AGM on May 23 for the board at Football Australia, so that is going to get quite interesting. Interestingly, Heather Garriock, who sits now in the interim CEO, she jumped down from the board, so she can she can be in the window as the CEO now. But also Tracy Holmes also alluded to 9 senior women leaving Football Australia from every department, from HR to media to coaches across the board. Does that point to questions around culture within the organisation? What does that look like? Football can't really afford any more scandals. We're still kind of reeling from plenty of others that have happened in the past. The financial situation was reported as $8.5 million in debt. A-League owes about half of that. The rest was pissed away on stupid things like keep up and everything like that from the APL. So there's a lot to look forward to, but it's going to take a big personality, I feel, and it's going to take really kind of doing the right due diligence to get the right person into that role.
Is there someone that you'd like to see, or is it hard to sort of gauge that?
Brendan Schwab was probably the next cab off the rank, but I understand he may have just gone into a new role with FIFPro, which is the world's players union. So does he kind of come back. My understanding is that him and James Johnson were pretty much neck and neck to get it this time. But Brandon Schwab is a very well-known personality around the football administration circles and everything else like that. He's probably my pick.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know enough about Heather Garriock to be able to. She's a former CEO of Taekwondo Australia. Is that enough? I don't know. She obviously comes from a football background, being an ex-Matilda.
Yeah.
But it is interesting who might be steering the ship for football over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And
hopefully they get it right.
And everything that goes along with it. Yeah.
I have nothing to add. I don't really eat their suits.
I know it doesn't.
Not really.
It's not the most. Don't get me wrong. It's not the most romantic part of the game, but it's so very important governance, and it's something that I don't think enough people kind of
appreciate.
Well, they don't take it seriously enough.
Yeah, fair.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still questions out there like blaming FA for stuff happening in the A-League. And while it's under his tenure, it's not in his day-to-day operational kind of things. That's the APL. So this is where people have to get a little bit more knowledgeable and educated on if they're going to bark up a tree, bark up the right tree.
Exactly.
So, as I said, important but not very romantic.
Yeah, fair enough.
Ugly, James?
The non-offside call for Izzy Gomez, I think her name is, from the Mariners in the semi-final between Melbourne City and Central Coast Mariners in the A-League Women's. Had been a really tight contest. Both sides had chances. Melbourne City probably more so than Mariners. And I think a lot of people after that game were like, well, where was VAR? And if I'm not wrong, it's due to the lack of camera angles or the fact they couldn't get the cameras or something at Casey Fields.
I think there's only VAR in the grand final, isn't there? Is that right?
I'm happy to be corrected. I'm not too sure what the process is.
I think that is the way that it goes.
Yeah, it's a stitch up and a half. I mean, when it was shown on the replays that she was offside, and I think Emily Husband, the Mariners coach, might have made mention, that one was offside, but it's just.
I thought her response was good. From where I was, it was offside, but. What are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to, you know what I mean? We can only go along with what the decision is.
Exactly. And I guess for those that are saying we would be better off without VAR, well, that's the trade-off that we're going to have to accept if that's, something that people want, because there's going to be mistakes. But, I just think it was a little bit of a sour note and not a good look. But, it is what it is. So, makes for a very interesting grand final this weekend.
I think the VAR thing it's hard because it really should be an all or nothing thing. Even look in England, for example, like it's not used in some competitions, but it's used in others, and different stages it's brought in. And I know that, like, for example, the FA Cup, you can't have VAR in the first round of the FA Cup with your local park teams, but then you bring it in at later stages, and how do you decide what is the appropriate time to bring it in at and what stage and all of that. So I think VAR in general has caused more problems than it's worth, having been subjected to it for so long. Mistakes were always a thing in football. Some of the most famous moments in football are from mistakes. From missed refereeing decisions, hand of God. The hand of frog. Thierry Henry against Ireland.
There you go.
There's plenty that have been missed, and if we re-refereed those games, what would the outcomes be, and what would those moments be? And I always used to shrug my shoulders and swings and roundabouts, but I think VAR, like, I hate when fans chant for VAR. And that's
you only ever do it once. You're
that's a pet hate of mine. People asking for it. The same people that want it out of the game. All of a sudden, it's their best friend. So if they scrapped it, I would be fine with it, because part of the beauty of football is people making mistakes. Whether that's putting the ball in their own net, giving away a penalty, getting sent off when they shouldn't, or a referee missing something. That's part of the reason why we're so tribal. Because everybody's against my team, and the referee wants to screw me over the whole time, and all of it. Plus, I also think a lot of incidents look a hell of a lot worse when slowed down. There's this whole real time thing, and
Arsene Wenger had a go at that.
You slow it down, and a slide tackle, which probably a yellow card, all of a sudden looks terrible. And we've seen players get sent off, even with VAR, and have the red cards rescinded. We had Evan Nielsen with Bournemouth recently. Bruno Fernandes had one where they slipped over, and even VAR is getting it wrong. So is it really worth it when it's the whole purpose of VAR was not to re-referee games, but that's what it feels like. It feels like that they are re-refereeing the games and trying to influence the referee to change their mind or give a call that they didn't see first time around. So yeah, I but to go back to that offside, I mean, the angle that we had, it looks miles offside. But hey, if that's just the mistake that was made, that's the mistake that was made. It's get over it and be better next year. If you're 3-0 up, it doesn't matter. So anyway, I know it's flippant because I'm not on the receiving end of it this time, but that's
my ugly boys, and this is
I didn't get one, but that's all right.
What's that?
I didn't get one.
Oh, well, go on then. Sorry, I thought that was it.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Go on.
I'll keep mine short because I know that it'll probably annoy some people. The booing of Trent Alexander-Arnold. Just grow up. He left your club. Get over it. Players leave clubs all the time. This means more because
you get that a bit in the A-League whenever an ex-player kind of comes back.
but that's because every club is doing that player because he's probably played for them.
That's what I mean. That means there should be less of it. Do you know what I mean?
This whole thing about Alexander-Arnold running down his contract and he's a vice captain and everything else. Yeah, but he's also a footballer and he's paid and he's got an opportunity. He's won everything at Liverpool. He's not going to Manchester United. He's not going to City. He's not going to Arsenal. Probably understand it a little bit more if he was doing that, but he's gone to Real Madrid. Like, it's an opportunity that
is it a step up?
It's one of the few that you could class as either on par or a step up. He's not going backwards with his career. He's not taking a step down. He's not
going to Everton.
He's not doing and the issue really seems to be that if he left last summer and Liverpool got 60 million from him, they'd probably be fine with it and it'd be time to move on. But I think the overreaction and the booing of him and everything else has just been a little bit silly. He's been at the club for 20 years. And people will turn around and say, no, it's different. He's from Liverpool and he's given us the two fingers and you'll never walk alone. They'll sign the bottom of every post where you'll never walk alone because that's what they do. I think it's football. It's business and it's a thing for him. It's the right age. What's he going to do? Go to Real Madrid when he's 33, 34?
He wants a new challenge.
I just think, and he's got his mate Bellingham is there and has probably sold it to him. So I think if he was going to go anywhere, it's probably and the Liverpool fan. Well, there are rivals in the Champions League. I mean, come on, that's like, what do you expect him to do? Do you expect him to go and play in League On or for someone that's not PSG, or do you expect him to go and play in a smaller league or a smaller team in Spain? No, he's wanted by the biggest. He's going to play with Xabi Alonso now, who will know him very well as a player, and I think good luck to him. It's an ambitious move for him, and it might not work out. He could come back with his tail between his legs in 2 or 3 years if he gets found out over there and whatnot. But I think the reaction to a player who has come through the academy, won everything that he could at Liverpool. He won the Champions League, he won the league, won the cups, done everything, played for England. It's a complete overreaction, and it's probably a symptom of the social media generation as well, that everything gets drummed up even more so in that environment. At the same time, I don't expect them to wish him well. I don't expect them to say, "Oh, good luck, Trent. Hope you have a great time." But actively booing the guy when he comes on, it's a step too far for me. But hey, I don't believe in booing anyway. That's just me. That's another day's work.
I'm going to carry on for my ugly a little bit off the back of Robbie Thompson with a surprise episode of A-League Off Air this week out of nowhere. And his little solo rant around Western United. And g'day, Robbie, if you are listening, I do know that Robbie tunes in from time to time to us here. Western United.
I didn't listen to it. Was it about Tarneet?
It was about Tarneet and just, I guess, about the whole Western United setup. And they're an ambitious club, don't get me wrong, but there's been so many promises and false dawns and everything else like that. And I think a lot of it comes back, and I think, to quote Neil again, about some of these inclusions of particular newly established clubs, is who actually wants them. Now 3,000 to a final on the weekend.
That looked embarrassing.
Suggests that no one in Western Melbourne, Eastern Geelong, wherever you want to call yourself, in that western outer suburban pocket of Melbourne, suggests that nobody wants them.
Because how tough would it be for the players, like when you're trying to have that semi-final and you don't really have that much of an atmosphere? You'd want to have a much more intimidating atmosphere with more people at your game, ideally, that have been along with you for the journey, like you have with, let's say, Auckland, who've had, 14, 15,000,
Yeah.
20,000 at their games. Meanwhile, when no doubt fans tuned in to watch this elimination final with a degree of interest and then seeing empty stadiums or empty seats within a 4,000 or 5,000 seater, it's not a good look.
But there's an old saying, by trying to please everyone, you please no one.
Yeah.
And hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think that's what they've tried to do with Western United, is we can't call ourselves Western Melbourne because we won't get the people from the regions. We can't call ourselves Geelong because we won't get the people from Melbourne. So they've gone for this hybrid kind of Western. There's no identity. Who the hell are you? So as I said, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think that identity is a huge issue.
I think it's okay to have small teams in a league. You know, it's like our equivalent of Premier League with Bournemouth, Brentford. I think it's okay to have small teams. You can't have every team at the top.
Going back to that point,
no, but
they've both
thing
got
is the
identities.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, like what the fuck is Western United?
Exactly.
Even the name.
Yeah,
the first thing they should have done is change the name.
Well, people
and give them some sort of identity, right? So I don't have an issue with small clubs per se.
No, neither do I.
And I like their little setup. And if they were to build around it, and if there was a train or something that went there, and there was houses around it, and the catchment area and all that. I think the idea in principle is sound, but we're quite down the track, and they've been quite successful on the pitch as well, and have a good team and have a good coach.
Just move to Geelong and have yourself as a team in Geelong. Like, have that point of difference. We're not from Melbourne, we're from Geelong.
No, I completely agree with you, and I think that's where, like, if we're going to have smaller teams, and it's okay to have them,
exactly right,
they have to have an identity that they can get behind, that people can get behind, that will give them that point of difference, whereas Western United is just so generic. It's a whole load of nothing.
MacArthur's a bit similar.
Well, yeah.
I find, because MacArthur's about the region of MacArthur down there in southwest Sydney. Call yourself Blacktown or call yourself Campbelltown or something like that.
But then they're sort of within that Western Sydney Wanderers catchment area as well.
They kind of are as well. So. Yeah,
I think Western United have done quite a lot of good things.
I think they have too. I don't want to be too harsh on them. But
they've successful on the pitch. I think they got some of the best kits going as well with the Kappa stuff. Got some really good players, good coach, winning games. And it actually does look like a pretty cool experience to go to a game there. I would like them to develop more and have that actual stadium of 10,000 or 12,000, whatever it is, and that actually comes to fruition. But yeah, you do need smaller teams in your league. Otherwise, all you're going to do is just build clubs in major cities. Yep. That's all you'll do because the major cities have the population. I would love a team in Darwin, for example. In theory, you could have a team of Tasmania was the obvious one, Canberra. Having teams in those areas where they've got an identity, we know where Canberra is. Yeah, like you speak to you speak to any people. I have friends who do watch the A-League because it's on at friendly times in Ireland and in the UK at the weekend. But like, how the fuck do you sell them Western United? Like, who is Western United? What is it? Canberra, obviously. Tasmania, everyone's heard of that. But who's heard of Western United? So I really think they missed the mark. And if there's any disasters now with this takeover, I mean, well, if I was looking to come out of a rut, I'd be renaming them. Yep. Straight away, calling them something different.
Exactly. Yeah, Western Melbourne, Geelong, whatever you want to call yourself. But have an identity and speak to the people. I think this is where kind of it comes back to marketing people not knowing their audience.
Or the people that put Western United in the competition to begin with.
Well, yeah, I mean, but essentially, it's a marketing thing that hasn't worked because you don't know your audience.
Exactly,
your audience is far too broad. Interestingly enough, the game this weekend, the first semi-final, will be played at Amy Park, so it won't even be, and it is a Western United,
and that's part of it as well. If you're going to keep shifting games to Amy Park and into Melbourne, well, what's the point of you being a outer suburbs club? That's where you should play all your games. That's what they should be. Having three teams playing games at Amy Park is a load of nonsense. It's why you shouldn't have more than one or two from the same city if they're going to ground share. But yeah, the Amy Park thing is a bit annoying. And if you've only got a pokey little tiny ground, we'll sell it out and it creates supply and demand.
I agree.
It creates supply and demand. Pack it out.
My thing has always been I would rather have 30 teams averaging 10,000 than everyone on 5,000 and the occasional 40,000. Like,
Yeah.
just go for aggregate rather than average,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That should be the goal for me.
Yeah,
is
I
because
agree.
they're all very, very achievable around Australia.
Yeah.
Well, we've got time. Can I throw in an extra quick ugly?
Yeah, go.
Quickly. Wrexham ticket prices.
Here we go.
Disney FC.
Yeah, they're not coming to Perth. Apparently, the Perth government.
You find it over
Yeah, that's what, just looking at flights. No, they are pricey. Wrexham active fans, $59. But Wrexham active fans, where are they jetting over? Gold tickets, $129 for the ultimate.
Oh boy.
What do you get for the ultimate?
Well, what you don't get is in the up the town lounge, which is the VIP.
Yeah, all right.
For $600. Platinum, $149 to $179. VIP club, $699.
People,
Like,
I don't.
it's hectic.
I don't get around these docos, especially when it's bloody Wrexham. But are people going to get out to this? Is it really that?
They've put it at Marvel because it's the Marvel connection, obviously with the sponsorship and whatnot. But I don't see them selling
that's
it.
That's a cross for me already. Having it at Marvel.
Yeah. It'll be a crap experience.
Yeah, it'd be shit
But
house.
that just shows that they're not here for the football side of things. It is purely the gimmick and everything else. And I've come to realise that as much as I don't want it to be a thing and I don't like it, it's not aimed at me. We're
the old men yelling at clouds.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's aimed at the families who sit down and watch the TV show.
Are there enough of those families that are going to get out?
And are they going to pay those prices?
Yeah. So I think they've priced people out of it. You'll probably see special offers turning up the week of the game, 2-for-1 offers, and discount codes and everything else that goes with it. Because
and this is where there's a bit of a false economy going on, because we know that there is the interest for football and these kind of things in Australia.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these type of events, a lot of people are just priced out. I'd love to go to that, but I'm not willing to spend $120. I'm not that invested in it.
No. Especially for a team like Wrexham. No,
I think, and the thing with Wrexham is, at least if it's AC Milan or Roma or the clubs we've had in the past, Manchester United, everything else, they've got players as well as the club name. Like James McLean, is the captain.
Yeah,
he should have been out the paddock years ago from an Irish perspective. But who are they selling? Paul Mullen doesn't even get a game anymore. So
I couldn't even name you.
This is where you're looking. This is where you're looking at it. At least with those clubs, they bring over 2, 3, 4 genuine superstars come to Perth. Yeah. Spurs brought Harry Kane, Son. United bringing their squad.
But there's already the core to go along with a lot of those clubs that you mentioned too. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, you've got a core fan base.
Kind of a crowd attracts a crowd in a certain way.
Yeah. So I will be very interested to see at those prices what the numbers look like for the cities that are. Yeah, but I'm just glad we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. No, I'm not. As I said, it doesn't really interest me too much. I just thought we might just have a quick look at the elimination final results across the weekend. Western United, of course. They got up 3-2 over Adelaide United. Noah Bodic was the star there, so that is season over for Adelaide.
And the end of Carl Veert as well.
And the end of Carl Veert. Yeah, interesting. I'll be interested to see where he ends up. Does he end up in somewhere like Asia? Or does he?
Might need a break, to be honest, after the last while.
There's a great montage of him just losing his shit and dropping F-bombs all over the... it's great. Get that into your veins.
I think it probably should be said. We tend to shit on a lot of the foreigners when they come over and being servants to the clubs and whatnot. But Isaias and Javi Lopez are done at Adelaide now. But they've absolutely improved the league and the players around them.
That whole Spanish connection that was at Adelaide, was it that 2016 when they sold out 50,000 at
your son's a shit goalkeeper.
Hey?
Your son's a shit goalkeeper. Gombo when he said that. But no, and Isaias left and came back as well. He went and had a spell elsewhere and then came back. And Javi Lopez, in his first season or two here, he was unreal. Yep. He was one of the best.
They got Juan Day over there after that too.
Yeah, so they've had plenty down through the years. But I think those two guys have been standard lifters, which is what you want from your visa player. So they're done in the league and it'll be a loss to Adelaide for sure.
In the other fixture, of course, Melbourne Victory got over the top of the Western Sydney Wanderers. Casey Boss scoring, Zinedine Mishash scored, and Well, Zach Saps put the ball in the net for the Wanderers. And, so we'll look ahead to a few more fixtures very shortly. In the meantime, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring you this chat with Ben Smith. He's going to join us next here on the Far Post Perth podcast.
What a run! This could be the one! It's in! That's what it's all about! And when it comes to sports gear that helps you perform your best, ID Athletic has the winning formula. From grassroots clubs to elite athletes, ID Athletic provides high-quality sporting apparel, screen printing, embroidery, and made-to-order promotional products. Proud sponsors of the Far Post Perth and passionate supporters of WA community sport. Visit ID Athletic at 84 Howe Street, Osborne Park, or online at idathletic.com. ID Athletic. Build your identity.
Tired of the same old cookie-cutter home designs? Dreaming of a space that truly reflects you? Then it's time to talk to the team at Trio Homes. Whether you're looking to build your dream home, redesign your current space, or simply renovate, Trio Homes is committed to unique designs, local personalised service and quality workmanship. And with former Perth Glory star Dino Julbich at the helm, you'll know you're getting passion and dedication built into every project. Discover the difference with Trio Homes. Visit triohomes.com.au.
Welcome back to the Far Post Perth. Great to have you with us. It's great to have this next man with us because, it's a guy who's been at the coalface for a lot of this Glory season as we still kind of come to grips with what was a super disappointing season, probably one of the most disappointing for the diehard Perth Glory fans. But Ben Smith's with us, football writer from the West, man about town, Sunday League footballer and all that, mate. So thanks for jumping on with us.
Thanks, Blaine. Thanks, Neil, for having me.
No worries at all. Mate, I did mention you've been at the coalface of the season. You've been at midweek presses, post-match presses. Sometimes it's just you and Neil at these kind of things, but I guess a little bit of time once the dust has settled to, reflect on the season, mate. How do you sum it up?
I try not to think about it too much because it was pretty depressing for long stretches. Yeah, it was. Obviously I haven't been covering the Glory for too long. I think since the end of 2022. But yeah, that was just, in some ways it was almost worse than the previous season where we had all the ownership stuff and the Quarter Mentha stuff going on in the background. And, is the club what's the future for the club? Now that we've seen the future, it wasn't very good, was it? It was a future perhaps left best unsaid in some respects. It was a very tough season to ask because I think everyone came out of the last season going, okay, it was bad, it was a horror show, but we've got new owners in. There's, it's a new era. Everyone's new. It's just one of those things you got to say, isn't it? Like new era. I feel like there's a Brian's Gun video on Twitter about new eras or something like that, but. It was tough. I think obviously you guys mentioned it on the last pod, but the Australia Cup campaign gave everyone such a false sense of security. And maybe in hindsight, it's very easy to look at the Moreton City loss in pre-season as a warning as to what was to come. But I don't think anyone expected to get as bad as it had. All the positive messages coming out of the club in pre-season. I think some of the signings on paper, although I will say I didn't think the squad was significantly stronger at the start of the season. In no way did I expect what happened to unfold. I didn't expect them to be as uncompetitive as they were for long stretches. And yeah, it was a tough season, and there were some really bleak moments. Like I think back to that Melbourne City game at home, which was where it was just like the fans that just started singing, we've got the ball, we've lost the ball. You're only beating us 4-0. How redacted must you be? It would. I think even the Newcastle game at home where it was like, all right, they're playing one of the other, quote unquote, worst teams in the league, and Newcastle were up 3-0 after 22 minutes or whatever it was. And they had a mid-game kind of like assembly in the middle of a pitch to be like, boys, we can't keep doing this. I've never seen a team have like a mid-game meeting at the 22-minute mark because they've been beaten 3-0. it was tough, and it did get a bit better, at least comparatively, but it's not fun when you're writing negative stuff every week, and people love to slam the media for being negative, but at the same time, it's very hard to find many positives out of that season.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and we've copped a little bit in terms of our evaluations of the season at all, but as we've said week after week, it's just so hard to find positives, and I'm sure, like yourself, there are some positives, Ben, and I guess one of them has been guys like Jalen Pearman, some of the younger guys coming through. But I guess in true Far Post Perth fashion, mate, we might get you to give us a few a good, bad, and uglies, mate, if there was any positives throughout the last week, months, or over the last 12 months, in fact.
Yeah, I think. Well, the good is we're getting a lot of good off-season football content, as the suits would call it. We're getting 4 Matildas games. That was announced. I'm speaking to you on Monday, May 12. That was obviously announced this morning. 4 games, 2 against Slovenia, 2 against Panama. One of those Panama games being down at Hands Oval in Bunbury is, I think it's really cool to see the national team going out to the regions and playing for the people of Bunbury. It doesn't. I think you look at some national teams and they're, the English national team, for example, they're almost kind of wedded to Wembley. It's always a good reminder that, the national team doesn't just belong to, people of Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, Brisbane, Adelaide. It belongs to everyone. So it's good to see, investment from the state government in bringing, football here, but then also making sure that, people in the regions don't miss out, which I think is good. And obviously, it was posted by a fan group last week for AC Milan en route to Perth for a pre-season friendly at the end of July, and that should be good fun. Milan coming for the second season in a row, and of course we've got the Socceroos game to look forward to in less than a month now, which is shaping up to be one of the most important Socceroos games in history, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are plenty of positives around football, and there's some good things happening locally. Ben, before we, I guess, get back into the glory, but just on these pre-season friendlies, and it's something that we've been very honest and open with and supportive of, is the current state government is probably the most football-friendly government I'd suggest we've ever seen in Australia. State, federally, locally, or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, Rita Saffioti is, a football fan. I know Daniel Pastorelli, who's just been, just going to state parliament. I believe he's a pretty strong football fan as well. And there's obviously support from other areas of the government. It's clear to see the benefit that these games bring, not just to, local fans, but, I know people who travelled from the eastern states last year to watch AC Milan and AS Roma, even though, it was a post-season game and all the players were tired and jet-lagged after a long season. It's just, as a football fan, as a sports fan, I really do like the fact the state government has realised that sports can be a big driver of tourism and a big driver of the economy. I'm obviously biased. I work in sports media, so that's where, the appeal is for me, but it's good to see that, so many other fans in Perth have, been able to reap the rewards of, so many friendlies. I think we've had Leeds here twice, Manchester United here twice, Crystal Palace, West Ham, the list goes on. We're getting AC Milan again. It's been really good.
It's almost polar opposites. I guess you mentioned Rita Saffioti there, and her willingness to kind of dive into the football bucket and I guess recognise the potential. Whereas we push towards federal, and it's very, very different to the attitude that maybe someone like Annika Wells has had in terms of funding the game. The fact that it's very, very fragmented, it's very discombobulated. There's umpteen kind of pathways in terms of getting grants and all that kind of thing. How have you seen that side of it? And I guess we can kind of move into whether that might translate into something more locally in terms of funding for the game, whether it be at Perth Glory or at Football West level.
Yeah, well, I think it's been spoken about before. You mentioned fragmented, and it's been commented on, by people in the government that, a stately, or, a club comes to a government for funding, and then, the state body comes to the government for a different funding, and then, and then you get, all these, and then the same club is going to federal for funding for something completely different. And, I think that's the strategy that Football Australia released quite recently. I think it was end of April, maybe even this month, was time. But that should help. Yeah, obviously, Football Australia got together all the state federations and basically kind of highlighted all the projects that they want funding for. It's all listed there. They want these kind of issues sorted out and projects funded over the next, 10 to 15 years. And there's obviously some short-term things they want. There's obviously some big ticket things that they want funding for. And, given that was one of the biggest criticisms of football's approach to funding, particularly compared to, the handouts that AFL and NRL clubs get, there seemed to be, on football side, there seemed to be a bit of a lack of strategy or a kind of, scattershot approach. So it's good that Football Australia have taken steps to streamline it. So every kind of stakeholder is kind of, lobbying the right people and asking the right questions to the right people.
The question most people will always throw out is why doesn't football get more airtime? Why doesn't it get more coverage? And that's not just to the paper, that's to the TV and the news, the nightly news, get a 40-second snippet. Other sports get 5-6 minutes. I think we have to be realistic that we're in AFL country. There's no denying it that the Eagles and the Dockers are the big news. Cricket, when that rolls around as well. But the tier below that, you're looking at, and you well know about the Western Force and the Wildcats and Glory, Fever as well at times. But is it a case of football simply needs to earn its stripes? That there's always going to be articles written about football, match reports, previews, all of that. But to actually make the front and back pages, we need the game to be success at Glory level, as well as these major sporting events, which they are. Like the Matildas coming here as a sporting event. It's not just football. So if we're going to compete with AFL and we're going to at least try go toe-to-toe with them on occasion, football needs to earn that place.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair summation. You mentioned Matildas when they were in Perth last couple of years ago. I can't remember how many straight back pages we had on the Matildas, but they were occupying space on the back page every day. We had that famous back page to Alana Kennedy because she kept putting our back pages on her Instagram. So I think we ran something which said "Hi Alana" on the back page, which was a bit cheeky. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I always say, Australia is a football country, but even more than that, WA is an AFL footy state. And I think that's something we, not gloss over, but we kind of forget sometimes as football fans. Even during the 2023 Women's World Cup, I was looking at the numbers for stories on the West Sport website, and out of the top 10 articles, I think 6 or 7 of them were AFL articles. Even when the Matildas were the hottest ticket in town, even when the Matildas were all anyone could talk about in anywhere during that 2023 Women's World Cup run, the most read stories on the site were still AFL, Fremantle, Dockers, West Coast Eagles stories. And, as a lifelong, round ball football fan, it is a bit frustrating at the times. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my footy as well. I cover the AFL, I cover the waffle. But yeah, and it is definitely, a case of, if the Glory were more successful, if the Glory were winning games, were in the news for the right reasons, they'd probably get more of a run. I mean, you mentioned the Wildcats earlier in that second tier. I'd kind of say they're in a tier by themselves between the next two tiers. They're not as big as Eagles or Dockers, but they've been so successful for so long that they have this, such a loyal and big fan base, which usually attracts, readers. It means that there's, we know of the West that the Wildcats matter to a lot of people and have consistently mattered to a lot of people for a long time. So, the Wildcats probably get a bigger run than, the Glory and the Force. As you mentioned, I cover the Glory and I also cover Western Force as well. And it's not a case of, I always see the accusation leveled that, I remember that, the phrase when I was growing up, nobody screws soccer like Seven, I think it was. And, obviously the West are owned by Seven. So there's, I think, some pre-existing biases against the West. And that's, I get it. I grew up in Western Australia. I kind of remember reading the paper and wishing that, the Glory had more pages. Now I'm in the system as well, and I not see things differently, but I understand why there is less coverage of a Glory. It's not because, there's an agenda against a Glory. For instance, Chief of Staff for the West Sports page is Jackson Barrett. He's a Chelsea fan. There's guys on, Paul Barry, who's the chief sub-editor of the news section. He's a big football fan. He's English. Couple of guys on the backbench who helped put together the paper, James Schwer and David Baker. They're Chelsea and Tottenham fans. There's lots of football fans at the West, and I haven't encountered anyone at the West who hates football. It's just, footy is on my mind 24/7, and in the paper 24/7. And yeah, I mean, when the Glory have been so, bad, but they've had a malaise around them for so long, it's really, hard to justify more and more, coverage. And, I know that, I see the top 10 most read articles, in the West Sport or on the website every week. And it's very rare for a Glory story to actually be there. So it's almost a catch-22. People say they don't go to the West for sports, for Perth Glory stories or football stories because they don't think the coverage is good. But then no one actually clicks on the stuff that, I do write. So there's not enough clicks to tell the editor, hey, more people care about this. You should give it a bigger run. So it's tough. And, I'm trying to change the perception that West hates football. I think it's an unfair perception. It's maybe a long-held belief that, has changed over time. Everyone I work with in the sports department, they like all sport. Like, that's part of the reasons why they're sports journalists, because they like all these different sports. Craig O'Donoghue, who's an AFL and a basketball writer, his kid plays football. I think he coaches his kid's football team. Like, there's no dislike or hatred of a roundball game anywhere in the West offices.
I think from a personal perspective, the thing that I noticed when I first moved here was, obviously we're a one-horse town, but it was the lack of analysis of football relative to, say, AFL, for example, and what gets nitpicked at. And the football coverage is generally press conferences and quotes and match reports, but the actual deep dive into the nuances of football and the tactics and a bit more analytical stuff is so missing in WA as a whole, not just the West. That there's definitely a gap there. But to your point, it's a business at the end of the day, and I get it that the AFL probably brings in more sponsors. It brings in more clicks, and clicks are going to drive your advertising, and that's the way of the world. But is it a case that you think, look, fast forward to 5-10 years and Glory were at a Wildcats level of success, that there would be naturally then an appetite to run more content?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, my sports editor, Jacob Waddell, I think he's had conversations with Anthony Radich, the Glory chief executive, because Jacob and Anthony get along quite well. And Anthony said, what do we have to do to get more coverage? And Jacob's just said, well, you guys need to win. You guys need to, start winning games. Need to start being successful. And
don't lie, we need our own Harley Reid. That's all we need. That'll solve all the problems.
Is there an A-League player who looks sort of like Harley Reid that we could potentially sign?
Lucky Rose.
Lucky Rose was the only one.
Yeah.
Just straight to mind. Lucky Rose.
And he plays to 1,000 people in Macarthur.
Yeah.
If Lucky Rose scores a goal, actually, sorry, he's in Newcastle.
Newcastle now.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, just touching on the analytical stuff, that's the stuff I like reading as well. Like, I like reading The Athletic. I like reading the tactical breakdowns. It's stuff that I have done in the past, but mainly for big events, like the Women's World Cup, like, the Socceroos World Cup games. there's, it's the tactical writing is something that I don't get enough time to do, I guess. I cover the Glory, I cover Western Force as well, and I cover, I've covered athletics, I've covered tennis in the last 6 months as well. I cover pretty much anything they tell me to, really, because I do have a bit of an interest in lots of sports outside football, even if football is my number one sport. But yeah, the analytical stuff is, the analysis, you're right. We don't get enough of that in the paper. And that's, I kind of did a poll, I think in pre-season, kind of asking Glory fans what they wanted to see. Basically, the main response was they just wanted more content. And that's something I, definitely have had to, I think I initially committed to doing a Glory focused column every week, but then the workload with, the other rounds that I have, the other stuff I have to do with work kind of took over, and it just kind of became one of those things where that was something I was driving rather than my boss is telling me I needed it to do. And because I was driving it, I kind of let it fall by the wayside just because I had my hands full with so many other stuff. But it's definitely something I would, I'm definitely keen to dip back into at some point in the future.
You did touch on it there about Anthony Radic and the relationship, and I think that's probably the other, from a fan's perspective, Glory don't do enough to get themselves out there, and Glory aren't proactive with getting out to the organisations. And I've been writing stuff about Glory for the best part of 15 years now, and I've never had any requests turned down, despite the memes that I've created ripping the piss out of them. They'll still never say no to a player interview, to accreditation. They couldn't be more accommodating. But does that correlate with your experience, or have you banged on Tony Sage's door and he said, "Get the West out of here"? He's released the hounds on you.
I've never had a particularly bad run-in with Tony Sage. I know my predecessor Nick Taylor had a run-in with Tony where Tony threatened to not talk to him again, and then Tony apparently rang him the very next day. So it was a very short-lived feud. But yeah, I mean, you bang on. I mean, I've never had an interview request for any player turned down. I've never had an interview request for Anthony Radic turned down. And I just wanted to, I thought this would probably be a good time to talk about, Anthony has, copped a bit of stick for, not being visible as a CEO. Like I said, I've never had an interview request turned down for him. I'm on good terms with him. What I would ask is how many other A-League CEOs are actually visible? Like, how many other CEOs in the league can you actually, pick out of a police lineup? Because I'm not sure there's many I could. I think the other part of it is how many other media outlets are actually asking for Anthony, for interviews. I know he's done a few things on the ABC. I remember speaking to someone from the ABC a while ago who commended Radic on the fact he was always happy to speak on the ABC if they approached him. But I think also, I think you look at some of the more public CEOs that Glory have had in the past, like Peter Filopoulos and Tony Pignata. Both of those guys were CEOs of teams who, yes, they had their problems, but they were more successful. And when you're more successful, it's probably a bit easier as a CEO to be visible. And I think Anthony, I think maybe there is some fair criticism that maybe, the club didn't put Anthony out enough this year. Maybe when things were going badly, maybe he could have got on the front foot a bit more. But I mean, as I've said, every time I've requested him, I've probably spoken to him 4 or 5 times across the last season. I did a podcast with him. He was, which was very, I think was quite critical of the Glory, and he was very happy. Him and Stan Lazaridis were both very happy to sit down and, and chat for that podcast. Yeah, I mean, I've never been denied a request by Gareth. I mean, I've got a very good relationship with Gareth, but at no point from anyone has the club kind of said, we're not letting you speak to so-and-so. And just to, touch on one of my previous points as well is, I'm a part of the reason, I feel like I have that good relationship is with people at the club is because I'm at pretty much every press conference. If I'm not at a press conference, I'll dial in from wherever the hell I am on that day. I've done press conferences on my day off before. I've been to pretty much every Perth Glory press conference since I started covering the team in late 2022. And a lot of the times, it's just me, post game, it's me and Neil and Justin Chadwick from AAP. Chadders covers literally every sport in Perth, so he can't be at every press conference, but, I'd say he's probably at the bulk of the home games. And then midweek, it's normally just me and Steve Allen from Channel 10. And there are times where Steve is a football fan. I have a very good relationship with Steve. He's a great journalist. But he can't be at every, because there's only a few journos at Channel 10. He can't get out to every Perth Glory presser if it clashes with, a Dockers or an Eagles press conference, which obviously takes priority because of a massive level of interest in AFL here. But also there are times where he couldn't go. I was speaking to him on Friday because I saw him at a Western Force press conference, and he was saying, I can't get to the Glory because I've got to read the news tonight. So that kind of limits how many, pressers he can actually get out to on the road. And particularly, I think something else unsaid is, the Glory being based in Fremantle, a lot of the news stations, I was driving 35 minutes from Osborne Park to Fremantle every week for a Glory presser. That's not a quick drive by Perth standards. And a lot of the other media outlets are also limited, are based in the city. So it's, I think the move to Mirrabooka will probably help Glory get a bit more press coverage, just because it's easier for people to get to from where their office is. But yeah, most times it's me or myself and Steve Allen. There's a couple of news stations who I haven't seen at a Glory. I've seen at one Perth Glory press conference, in the past 2 years, and that was David Zrilich's unveiling.
Ben, just quickly, mate, while we're still talking about, I guess, media and that side of the game, there's been a lot of confusion, I feel, around the messaging coming out of the club, be it regarding on-field, be it regarding off-field. As someone who reports and maybe at times translates the messaging that does come out of the club, how have you seen it, that PR aspect, and has the club got their messaging right this year?
Sorry, I just had the momentary thought, what would a Glory language sound like?
I don't know. Put it into ChatGPT, might be able to work it out, yeah.
That's a rabbit hole I don't think I want to go down too much. But yeah, you'd have to say no, right? You've touched on it so many times on this podcast before, just the messaging in preseason was all wrong. And, it's very striking when you listen to, Ross Pelligra speak about, I knew this was going to be a tough first season. I wasn't expecting miracles this first season. Whereas for, preseason, it was, we're going to make the finals. We're going to sign all these great players. They're going to, and I get the need to create hype going into a season, but, the phrase that you guys have used before is overpromised and under-delivered. And when you've got a fan base which has been, kicked in the proverbials as many times as Perth Glory fans have for the better part of 20 years, there's, once bitten, twice shy, or, Glory fans face probably once bitten, thrice shy. They're not going to, they're going to be cautious. If you raise their expectations and then dash them, so spectacularly, they're going to be, they're not going to forgive so easily, even if it is a new ownership regime, even if it is a new era, quote unquote. But I think the mess, obviously, it's very easy in hindsight to say, but even at the time where, there was talk of, wow signings and, I think it was, a player was compared to like a young Mo Salah, Abdul Faisal it was. And to be fair, those two Australia Cup games, he did sort of look like Mo Salah for a fleeting moment. So I think we all thought, oh, hang on, maybe Stan was right. But overall, it felt like the messaging almost, the messaging, it doesn't have any impact on the playing squad, right? But it almost set the the team as a whole, the club as a whole, to fail when they fell so dramatically short. And I hope that's an area where Stan is obviously. I mean, I've mentioned Stan Lazaridis has never turned down an interview request for me. He understands the need to be publicly available, but I do hope, I say this as someone who gets along very well with him, but he kind of does tone down that messaging going into year 2. And I think that's a lesson he has kind of learnt as well. Or at least I hope he has learnt it.
My concern is if they're not getting the external messaging right, are they getting the internal messaging right? That's my concern, and I guess you could probably draw some parallels with that as well. Looking ahead, Ben, where's the primary area of focus for this football club at the moment? Is it on field? Is it off field? Is it recruitment? Well, what does that look like for you?
I think, on field and recruitment, I guess, is bundled in one. I think off field, the club has spoken about its off field gains this year. Obviously that's not something fans can see. No one is cheering a club who wins the off-field A-League ladder. It's got the improvement has to come on field because I get a lot of the Perth Glory media releases about their new sponsors. They have secured some good sponsors. Baskin and Robbins, they obviously got on board Zambreros. Unfortunately, that has not manifested in either Zambreros or Baskin and Robbins at the media catering, catering esky, shall I call it, that we get at games. But we can hope that that's an area that they change in the future. But there is sponsors coming on board the club. But as Anthony Radic just said, you can only attract so many sponsors when you're down the bottom of the league. People are drawn to a winner, right? Fans are drawn to a winner. Sponsors are drawn to a winner in the same way. So the improvement has to come from on field. I think they've made, positive moves. I think the academy setup, which you guys spoke about on the last pod, I think that long term that'll hopefully reap rewards. I think that's a good decision on the club's part. Obviously, there was a bit of there's been a bit of talk about facilities. The fact the club's moving to a Mirrabooka facility with a view to build a more permanent, world class, full time headquarters in the mid to long term. But for me, the piece has to come on field because you can sell the fans a dream of, we're going to have the best facilities. We're going to do this, we're going to do that off field. Look at Western Sydney Wanderers for so long. They had the best facilities of any club in the A-League, but it didn't mean diddly squat because they couldn't produce on the field. They couldn't connect the on-field, the on-field ticket with the fans off field because, like you say, fans aren't dumb. Fans can see. Fans can't be hoodwinked, when the performances are so bad and as bad as they were for this season. So they need a really strong off-season. It doesn't even have to be big names they sign in the off-season, but they need, proven performers, guys who can, at the bare minimum, do a job and hopefully a bit more than that.
Obviously, Ben, you'd mentioned it, I guess a little bit of a change in the structure of the academy rather than having a full-blown academy from 12s until 23s. They've kind of altered that a little bit. It'll be 12 to 16s, which is more of a train on the old future glory, stick with your club and then kind of get the top-ups in there at the elite level. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the talent, I guess, that is coming through. I think we mentioned it with Tommy Dolman last episode. It's been a real bright patch as far as sending a lot of this WA talent overseas. However, we're not seeing the fruits of that labour in the Glory NPL team and in the Glory A-League team rather. And it's something that I feel is really missing. How do you see that part of it?
Yeah, there's definitely. It feels like there's more buzz around these kids coming through. Remember, the COVID year where, Glory basically had to field an entire academy team. No one really knew any of those names coming in. It was just they just appeared on the team sheet and you had to learn 9 new players in the space of, half an hour. Whereas it feels like, I'm not quite sure of the exact reason for this, but, maybe it's because the NPL, I feel like the NPL has maybe become a bit more popular in the last 2-3 years. Maybe there's a bit more kind of marketing around it. But it means that people know know the names, know some of the young players coming through in the Glory a bit more. But I was having a chat a couple of years ago for a story about youth development football in Australia and in particular WA. And there has been, over the last probably I'd say definitely last 5 years, there's been more and more WA kids playing young Socceroos, playing, under 17s, under 19s, under 20s, more young Socceroos, more young Matildas coming from Perth. And I remember, probably 10, 15 years ago, it felt you might be lucky to get 1 or 2 WA kids in any youth squad. Whereas, you look at the recent young Socceroo success at the Asian Cup, and you had Jalen Pearman, Daniel Benny, Adriano Labib didn't go with the team, but he would have had he not picked up that knee injury, and then a couple of Perth Glory young players. So you had a fair bit of representation, and then the next generation coming through. Gio Diabru is someone who I haven't seen play. I work most Saturdays, so unfortunately I don't get to watch anywhere near as much NPL as I like, or pretty much any NPL. So I'm kind of going off what I hear, what people tell me. I've heard Diabru, some good things about him. Obviously, really cool to see Seb Despotovsky get a debut, and hopefully he gets some game time in the Australia Cup game on Tuesday. And then guys like Majeka Dunmi have shown glimpses of being really good A-League players. It's just Choir and Go. I know he hasn't set the world on fire, but there have been glimpses from him, which I've been really impressed with. Joel Lanasmo, our comrade in South Korea now, but he was someone that every time he, came off the bench, he'd have at least one moment where he got fans out of their seats. And, Max Naylor is a name as well that I've heard. And then even some of the guys, like an Alex Garbowski, who never played for Glory, but went overseas. A Christian Palela, who's in the, who I think has been in a few young Socceroos games. He hasn't played for Glory yet, but I know he's someone that the Glory like the look of. Robert Cook is someone who, he never played for the Glory, but he's obviously doing enough to, and James Overy as well. They both did enough to attract the attention of overseas clubs, even getting a bit more left field with it. But someone like a Zach Gilsonen, who isn't, he's just left my club, Blackburn, but he played a couple of first team games. He's not, I think his parents are Irish, and I think he's going to represent Ireland at,
stop trying to take him.
Yep.
Leave him alone.
Typical Irish.
He comes from Sorrento. He's, is he ours, or is he part of that northern suburbs, British and Irish enclave that they have up there?
His parents are from basically 5 minutes down the road from me in Dublin. So, and I think he's played underage for Ireland. But yeah, it is. Yeah. There's probably a few of those cases floating about. But just on those young players, is there a human interest side to the coverage potentially as well, in the sense of following up with Daniel Benny? How's he getting on a year later in QPR, and Jalen Pearman when he goes over there, Robert Cook? Do you think that there's potentially interest from the people here in long form, how are you getting on sort of stories, as opposed to a match report, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke to Daniel Benny when he was in Young Socceroos camp. I had a good chat with him about his time at QPR. He's had a year which has maybe defied expectations. I think it felt like year one would be he'd just be with the youth team, but he's played about a dozen games off the bench for the first team. As a raw 18, 19-year-old to do that, to go from A-League men's to, a dozen championship games, which anyone who watches the championship like myself and Blaine, it's a very physical, very fast
league. Not anymore, Ben. Not anymore.
One day Blackburn will get back to the EPL when we get bought out by owners who actually want to invest money in my club, but that's probably another podcast. But yeah, no, there is, I mean, from my perspective, there's definitely interest about. I've interviewed, Ash Maynard Brewer, who's obviously at Charlton, the son of former Glory CEO Jason Brewer. I interviewed him a couple of years ago. I'm always, I've interviewed Cam Burgess in Socceroos camps as well. I've interviewed Ale Shikati I've spoken to him 2 or 3 times, both through presses and a one-on-one. There's definitely interest from my side, and definitely interest from the paper to tell these stories. I mean, in my opinion, that's what the West Australian sports pages should do. They should tell the stories of the West Australians who are doing well overseas, like a Cameron Burgess, like an Ale Chikati, who, might be the long-term Socceroos defender for the next 10 years. For me, that should be our bread and butter as a media outlet. And, I think we do a reasonable job, but there's definitely always, room to grow. But I've never, I'll never turn down an interview with an overseas footballer, particularly one from Perth who, when there's a local connection to a story, as you guys will know, as Sandgropers, as WA residents, we're very parochial people. We, we don't like those suspicious Eastern staters. And, it's always, you look at someone like, it's obviously a very different, sport, but someone like a Daniel Ricciardo, we'd put, even when he wasn't doing well, we'd put stories up on Daniel Ricciardo and they'd get so many hits because people, obviously the Netflix factor has turned him into a big star, but he was already a big star before Netflix, and he was already a big star in Perth. Everyone in Perth knew who Daniel Ricciardo was before Netflix. And, even now, when there's any sort of speculation about Daniel Ricciardo, we'll put a story up on that because that's what Perth people like. And, even, in football terms, Sam Kerr drives a lot of traffic to Perth now. People just want to read about Sam Kerr and, whether it's good or bad. And, I think the marketability of football players compared to other codes is something, I think they struggle for cut through in other states. And part of it is we don't have outside of Sam Kerr, we don't really have that one superstar in the game, right? But yeah, going back to your initial point, no, I'm always looking for good kind of overseas WA stories to tell.
Ben, just before we let you go, mate, we're starting to run a little bit short on time. Obviously, you're involved locally playing Sunday League football, mate. How's that side of it go, mate? And is that an area of your football that maybe you get to switch off a little bit and enjoy?
I wouldn't say switch off and enjoy because I feel like I take the game very seriously. So even playing Sunday leagues, it's, I see it as work. I won't mention, but we lost 5-2 to Olympic Kingsway yesterday in a game that Neil Sherwin, I believe.
Did Sherwin play?
He was absent without leave, I believe.
Oh, Sherwin, what's going on there?
I was not selected and was playing at Metros instead.
Is that right?
So, yeah, just chipping in.
Is everything well up there at Olympic, mate?
Too well. There's too many players. Yeah, that's the thing. They've got massive squads, and
there's too much depth. They're too good.
Yeah,
it's not fair.
There really is. The first team got top of the league with a win. The Rezzies are second, I think, and then the Metros are pushing for the top as well in their league. So there's just a flood of players. The cool club today at the moment playing not Perth. No one's got a Perth.
Hey, please. Unbeaten in the top division. We'll take that. Don't worry about that. Ben, mate, thanks very much for jumping on board with us. We really appreciate you giving us a bit of time and plenty of insights, mate, into the media world and the football landscape, mate. So thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
What a run! This could be the one! It's in! That's what it's all about! And when it comes to sports gear that helps you perform your best, ID Athletic has the winning formula. From grassroots clubs to elite athletes, ID Athletic provides high-quality sporting apparel, screen printing, embroidery, and made-to-order promotional products. Proud sponsors of the Far Post Perth and passionate supporters of WA community sport. Visit ID Athletic at 84 Howe Street, Osborne Park, or online at idathletic.com. ID Athletic. Build your identity.
Tired of the same old cookie cutter home designs? Dreaming of a space that truly reflects you? Then it's time to talk to the team at Trio Homes. Whether you're looking to build your dream home, redesign your current space, or simply renovate, Trio Homes is committed to unique designs, local personalised service and quality workmanship. And with former Perth Glory star Dino Julbich at the helm, you'll know you're getting passion and dedication built into every project. Discover the difference with Trio Homes. Visit triohomes.com.au.
Big thanks to Ben Smith for joining us for that chat with myself and Neil Sherwin. Plenty of great points made, and of course you can keep reading Ben's stuff in the West Online, and of course in the daily paper. Plenty of news coming out of Perth Glory, hopefully in the off season. Boys, let's have a chat about the Australia Cup. Glory through narrowly, against the Mariners. But I guess I've always reinforced the fact that considering how isolated Perth is, it's imperative that Glory make the cup, but also use the games to go on a bit of a run and get that run in your legs. Of course, last year was a little bit different. We kind of got a little bit lucky with those games against Newcastle in regional areas, but obviously you want those competitive hit-outs more so than friendly, James.
Well, yeah, and we can't then complain about, a lack of top preseason games to get the players fit, and then if we don't get those games, complain about players being underdone.
Well, it was let's be purely honest, that was a whole fallacy because there was the most amount of games that we've played in years.
But this is the thing, the important thing is that we've got to get this preseason off to a good start and look to build a bit of momentum heading into the off-season, and the fact that we got the job done against Central Coast in a game that shouldn't have been anywhere near as close as it was on the balance of play. It's positive. And for as much as, our season's been poor, in our last 4 games, that's now 3 wins. So that's a small positive, not a big one, but a small one, and shows that, again, if you can add in some good players and get good preseason games in against good quality opposition and lots of them, as many as we can, then fingers crossed we can see more cohesion and chemistry being built.
Neil, does that reinforce the need for the players? I mean, it was something that you spoke about over the last couple of weeks, that to get the players in early, get the run in the legs early, get the imports early to ensure they can go on a little bit of a run?
Yeah, it depends what stock they put into the cup now.
Yeah,
right. How important is it to? They've done the hard work of getting into the last 32 for the first time in quite a while, and now you've got to look forward that with a new batch of players, potentially new ideas and a bit of a shake-up, that this forms an important part of the season. It's a chance for silverware. We remember the days of Glory getting to finals. That was nice, even though we're still bitter about never getting to host it. So I think this is a really important thing for a club that's finished bottom of the latter 2 years in a row, that they now have, in theory, 2 trophies to compete for in the season, the league and the cup. I put a lot of stock into the cup. It's an important competition that grows year on year, and I hope they take it seriously. I think they will, now that they've made it through. Yeah, I agree totally. Just a quick look around the grounds, I guess, across the weekend. Before we probably should mention the game itself. We did watch it. We kept it on in the background. The own goal was kind of a snapshot of Glory's season. Majeka Dumley, bad positioning, facing his own goal, and also lack of communication, it looked like, as well. Really poor goal to concede, and going in at 2.5 time. I was like, this feels like 90 minutes too long in the season. But they turned it around, and I think that they Oli Sail Fan Club back? We are back. We reconvene tomorrow morning. We ride at dawn. Was there a extraordinary general meeting to... extraordinary goalkeeper. Extraordinary goal. We ride at dawn. We're back. Membership packs in the post. Brilliant. Good stuff that the Glory could get through, and some real character. Great to see a couple of Glory shirts in the crowd as well. Boys, I just thought I'd give a little bit of an around the grounds. NPL on the weekend. It was a round that nobody really kind of capitalised. There was the initial draw between Perth and Western Knights, and Armidale could have closed the gap, and Glory could have closed the gap, and even...
Even Bayswater, I guess, conceded their first points of the season with their draw with the Olympics. So nobody really capitalised on the weekend. So the only one that really kind of did well was Fremantle and Stirling. Fremantle getting over the top of Perth Red Star 4-2. So Red Star not looking good for them. And Stirling 2-0 over Floriat, who find themselves dead last at the moment. For a big club like Floriat, that's some real panic stations, I feel. And what does it look like over June when that window opens up? It'd be really interesting to see how that all goes. So a little bit there from the NPL men's. Just a quick one out of the NPL women's. Now, this is really lopsided as far as games played. Balcatta haven't played anywhere near the games that everyone else has. However, they did have a 5-1 win against UWA on the weekend. 1-1 draw between Perth and... No, hold on, where are we? I've got the wrong fixture there. My apologies. It was a 1-1 draw between Perth and Fremantle City, a 4-2 win of Balcatta over the NTC, a 6-2 win for Red Star over UWA, and a 3-0 win for Subiaco over Mum FC. But hard to give you the snapshot of the latter when it's so skewed and games played and everything else like that. So there we go. Look ahead to the weekend, gents. We have got the grand final in the A-League women's. That is all happening Sunday afternoon at 1:15. Melbourne Victory taking on the Central Coast Mariners. Probably should have been a Melbourne Derby grand final.
Probably should have been.
It won't be, but it'll be Melbourne Victory v Central Coast.
I think Victory win.
Yeah, I think Victory for me.
I think so. I mean, Central Coast did well to get to get here. Yeah, but I think Victory will be.
And the first leg of the semi-finals of the A-League men's, Auckland will take on Melbourne Victory. Now, that is Saturday, 2 p.m. Perth time. Well worth getting on the couch for that. And you can settle yourself in because straight after that will be will be Western United v Melbourne City is happening straight after that. So you can take that all the way into almost the into the European football of that evening.
Yeah. Auckland and West United, I think, get up.
Yeah, I think Auckland win at home.
Yeah. And West United, I think, they've looked more convincing than Melbourne City. I don't think Melbourne City have enough goals in them in big games. They defend well, but I don't think
do they get a crowd to this? Like what?
No, I don't think so.
And this is the sad part about these two clubs.
We've talked about them plenty in the crowds that they're averaging attendances, and they should bring more to the league, and they should be doing.
But you're not going to have one of these games. You're going to have two of these at the same stadium with two shit crowds.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one is going to be an absolute belter in Auckland, and then be another belter in Melbourne.
Yeah.
You know how you'd avoid these games? Get rid of finals.
Yeah. No, I agree. I get rid of them. But
get rid of it.
I see why they've got them, but I could do without them.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, these games are supposed to. The whole purpose of finals is that they are money spinners, right? Yeah. That we have them because they drive interest. Yep. People get into finals. It's the Aussie way and all of that, but it's the Aussie way if you've got big crowds and people turn up and really got eyeballs on it. Neither of these teams are going to bring that. So
imagine if you had a final between Macarthur and Western United.
Boring. No one would watch it.
Yeah.
You just get the cowbells and the dude on the megaphone from West United that is, drowning everyone.
I hate that guy on the megaphone.
I hate it as well.
I don't mind a megaphone at the football, but don't sing it for 90 minutes, you donkey.
It's just it's too much.
No, it's horrendous. Yep. Boys, any nonsense predictions, final predictions before we wrap things up?
Joe Lolly, welcome to Perth Glory.
Ooh, are you confident about that?
No.
No, it was good to see Glory hit peak fitness and play 120 minutes of football just as the season ends.
Yep.
No longer underdone.
And the boys can go on holidays happy, I guess.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think they I mean, there will be some backslapping and great comeback and everything else, and it does take us into the off season. But now I guess we look forward to terminations and releases in the next week or two. That's the reality. That's what's next.
Yeah, it is. And we've been pretty forthright in saying that this needs to start moving quickly and there needs to be lines in the sand and everything else like that. So the next couple of weeks might be big and we'll see how all these exits and Everything else go. Yeah, beauty. All right, monster episode. We'll wrap things up there. It has been a big one. Big thank you to you, James Rent, and big thanks to Neil Sherwin. Big thanks to Ben Smith, of course, and don't forget to tell everyone about the about the Far Post Perth podcast, available on Spotify, Apple, and of course YouTube Music. So we'll wrap things up there. Enjoy your football for the week, and we'll catch you next time for more.